While shopping at the mall, a child suddenly slams into my 5-month pregnant belly. Blood immediately pools on the floor. With trembling hands, I call my boyfriend, Garrett Holloway, and beg him to come get me as quickly as possible. But even after I am rushed into surgery and finally pulled back from the brink, he never shows up. But through the glass, I see him helping another woman into the hospital for a prenatal checkup. She only stumbled a little, and her husband got so worried. He brought her to the hospital right away. Some people are just luckier than others. Not everyone gets a man who cares for them so attentively. Listening to the nurses whisper among themselves, I tighten my grip on the miscarriage report in my hand. Then, I send a message to my family. I write, "Mom, I'll go with your arrangement. I'm not marrying Garrett anymore." The nurses finished their gossip and glanced back at me, lying helplessly in the hospital bed, unable to move. Their expressions shifted from envy to contempt. They filed out of the room, but their deliberately lowered voices still carried through the door. A miscarriage at her age? Then why'd she go and get knocked up in the first place? I asked when I was filling out her forms, and she's not even married. Gosh. Who knows what she's been getting up to out there? I lay numb on the bed. My heart felt like it had been torn apart so many times there was nothing left to tear. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother. "Have you finally come to your senses? I've told you 1,000 times. Sticking with a man while he builds himself from nothing is the worst deal a woman can make. You've been together for 5 years. You were carrying his child, yet he hasn't said a single word about marriage. What more proof do you need? Come home. We have more than enough money. You could find 100 men like him." Mom was the most clear-headed woman I'd ever known. Years ago, some broke nobody had chased her for 7 straight years, and she never once looked back. She poured every ounce of attention into herself, and ended up marrying my father, a Prescott. I'd always thought she was shallow, that she didn't understand what love was. But it turned out I was the naive one, believing everything could be justified by it. I replied with a single okay, dragged my weak body out of bed, and took a cab home. The moment I pushed open the front door, I saw Garrett Holloway standing there with a spoon in his hand, feeding Sienna Cole a prenatal tonic one careful sip at a time. "Kira, you're back so soon?" He stood up and set the bowl behind his back, guilt written all over his face. I recognized that tonic. It was for stabilizing a pregnancy. So he'd taken Sienna to the hospital and confirmed she was carrying a child. Sienna wasn't feeling well, so I told her to rest here for a bit, Garrett explained. He walked toward me with an ingratiating smile. "You're back early, so the baby must be fine, right?" I knew it. We've been so careful, nothing was going to go wrong. Garrett reached out to touch my stomach, still smiling. I slapped his hand away before he could touch me. He froze where he stood, the smile disappearing from his face. Sienna spoke up from the side, quick to defend him. "Kira, Garrett was really worried about you. The second he got the call, he rushed to the hospital. If you want to blame someone, blame me." I started feeling sick out of nowhere, and it held him up. She lowered her eyes with a look of self-reproach. The pallor of early pregnancy gave her just the right amount of fragile beauty, and something like tenderness flickered across Garrett's face. After a pause, he offered to go make something to eat for both of us, and disappeared into the kitchen. Sienna waited for the kitchen door to close. The 2 tears that had been threatening to spill vanished without a trace. She picked up the bowl from the nightstand and stirred it idly, a completely different person from the one she'd been moments ago. "See, that's where you're not smart about it, Kira. Men are simple. You show a little weakness, play a little helpless, and they'll treat you like you're precious. You're always fighting him head-on. No wonder he'd rather have me stay late at the office with him than come home to you." My gaze dropped to Sienna's long, slender fingers. Showing weakness and playing helpless? If I'd actually done that, Garrett would never have climbed to where he was today, not without my help. I walked toward her, one slow step at a time. I took the bowl of tonic from her hands and smiled. "You didn't stir this well enough. It won't work if you drink it like this." Sienna looked at me, her smug smile faltering. It shifted into wary confusion as she tried to read what I was about to do. The corner of my mouth lifted, and I flicked my wrist. The scalding tonic splashed across Sienna's face. Garrett came running at the sound of Sienna's scream. He took one look at the dark liquid dripping down her face, and the air left his lungs. "Kira Prescott, what the hell are you doing?" Garrett grabbed a towel and frantically wiped at the mess, but the second it touched Sienna's face, she screamed again. "It hurts. Garrett, my face, it hurts so bad." He rounded on me, finally losing what was left of his patience. "What is wrong with you? Sienna's too nice to fight back, so you just dump all your anger on her? Is this how you were raised?" He scooped Sienna up in his arms and brushed past me without sparing me a second glance. The sound of the front door slamming shut echoed through the apartment. I didn't know how long I stood there before my phone chimed. Sienna had put up a new social media post and tagged me in it. The photo was taken at a hospital. It showed her stomach, still flat, with a large hand resting on it. The watch on that wrist was the one I'd given Garrett for our anniversary. The baby is 3 months along. And just between us, the daddy is kind of a big deal. A handful of comments from coworkers had already piled up underneath. Don't even have to guess. It's Mr. Holloway, right? I always felt like there was something going on between you two. Look at you, Sienna. You haven't even been his assistant that long, and you're already becoming Mrs. Holloway. Congrats. I was still scrolling when a private message from Leanne Jacobs popped up. I saw Sienna's post. Are you okay? Leanne had worked under me for 3 years. She was the only person at the company who knew about my relationship with Garrett. I exited the post and typed a quick reply. Fine. I'd weathered worse storms than this. A petty little provocation like this wasn't going to make me lose my composure. Leanne sent back a hugging emoji. I stared at it, and my mind drifted to the day Holloway Group was first established. Garrett had held me in his arms and said he finally had the means to give me a better life. He said we'd have a beautiful child together, that our family would be his whole world. Now I'd lost the baby, and he couldn't even tell. After a pause, I typed again. Pull the plug on the Prescott Group project. Leanne took a long time to reply before finally sending back a simple okay. Holloway Group had been struggling lately. That project was one I'd gone behind Garrett's back to secure, personally asking Dad for the favor. But a man this rotten didn't deserve any of it anymore. I liked Sienna's post, tossed my phone aside, and fell into a dreamless sleep. The next morning, I went to the office. I was about to push open Garrett's door when a passing employee stepped in front of me. He wore a knowing expression and kept his voice low. Miss Prescott, you might want to wait. Miss Cole is inside. After last night's post, everyone had decided their relationship was as good as official. They were all quietly making room for Garrett and Sienna to have their privacy. I smiled and held up the resignation letter in my hand. I'm here to resign. Do I need Miss Cole's permission for that too? The color drained from his face. Everyone knew I was the backbone of this company. More than half the revenue came through me. They also knew I was someone who'd practically given my life to this place. Even if Garrett quit tomorrow, I wouldn't leave. He knocked on the door in a hurry, visibly rattled. I didn't wait for Garrett to say come in, and walked straight through. Inside the office, Sienna was perched on the edge of Garrett's desk. She was toying with a photograph, the one taken of Garrett and me in front of the building the day the company launched. He'd had it carefully framed and placed in the most prominent spot in his office. Garrett stood up from his chair when he saw me. He'd clearly seen Sienna's post from last night, because for once there was a trace of guilt on his face. He told Sienna to step out, then turned to me. Sienna's pregnant with my child. But don't worry, that won't change your position as the future Mrs. Holloway. That post last night was just a joke. Don't take it to heart. You went after Sienna first, and she was just upset. I didn't respond. My eyes had landed on the photograph Sienna had tossed carelessly on the floor. Garrett followed my gaze and noticed it too. After a beat, he walked over and picked it up. But he didn't put it back in the frame. At the end of the day, you shouldn't have taken it out on Sienna. This is all on me. I pulled the photograph from his hands and tore it in half right in front of him. Then I placed the resignation letter on his desk. Mr. Holloway, sign this. Garrett's brow furrowed deeply. He instinctively reached for the torn pieces, but the moment he registered the words resignation letter, his expression twisted into fury. Enough. Kira, what the hell do you want? I met his gaze calmly. To make room for Sienna. That shut him up for a second, and his face went white with anger. Then something clicked, and his voice dropped low. Did you go running to your mother? This is her idea, isn't it? She's never liked me, always finding some new way to make my life difficult. If she's got that much free time, maybe she should keep a better eye on her own husband, and clear some space on the tabloid front pages instead of. The slap landed before he could finish. My voice was ice. Garrett Holloway, a man pathetic enough to get his mistress pregnant, has no business talking about my family. Garrett stared into my eyes, and something in them made him flinch. Before he could say a word, a scream came from outside. A female employee burst through the door, panicked. Mr. Holloway, something happened. Sienna, she's bleeding, there's so much blood. He shoved past me before she had even finished speaking. The corner of the desk caught me right in the lower abdomen, and a wave of cold sweat broke over my entire body. I slid to the floor. Blood was already spreading between my legs. The employee who'd rushed and saw me and scrambled over. Ms. Prescott? Are you okay? Someone call an ambulance. They got me into the ER fast enough that there wasn't any lasting damage. Mom called while I was still at the hospital. She sounded furious. Garrett just called and told me to stay out of your relationship. What is that supposed to mean? He can't even keep his own company from falling apart. Yet he's got the nerve to cheat? And then he has the audacity to come swinging at me about it? Where are you right now? Come home. I told her where I was. There was a long silence on the other end before she let out a cold, bitter laugh. He put you back in the hospital again? Fine. Don't worry about it. I'll handle this. Time for Holloway Group to go under. After the call ended, I sat in the hallway and waited quietly for the results. Just then, Garrett came out of the room next door with Sienna leaning on his arm. The second she saw me, Sienna's eyes went red and fat tears rolled down her cheeks. Garrett stared at me, his face dark. You practically made Sienna lose this baby. Are you happy now? I didn't even look up. Sienna's been scheming so hard to take my place. Funny how it never occurred to her to just ask me for it. I smiled and added, I would have given it to her. Kira, Garrett roared, his expression murderous. How long are you going to keep this up? I already told you nobody is taking your place. What more do you want? I rested a hand over my flat stomach and looked at Garrett with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Garrett, let's break up. The angry words he was about to say died in his throat as something seemed to occur to him. He pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled. Forget it. You're pregnant. I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm telling you one last time, stop saying things like that. His eyes were cold when they settled on me. You're carrying my child. If you leave me now, where are you going to go? Who's going to want you? I almost laughed. He sounded exactly like the impression Mom used to do when she was trying to talk me out of being with him. The voice a man got when he'd decided a woman couldn't leave. It was identical. The door to the exam room opened and the doctor stepped out, chart in hand. Kira Prescott? The scarring from your recent miscarriage hasn't fully healed yet. You'll need to be very careful to avoid any further trauma to the area. Understood. Thank you, doctor. I took the chart. And in the next second, there was a sharp rustle as the medical forms Garrett had been holding for Sienna scattered across the floor. What did she just say? Who had a miscarriage? The white paper sheets of the medical chart did not flutter as they hit the floor. They slid across the polished gray linoleum with a soft, dry hiss coming to a halt right against the toe of Garrett's leather Oxford shoes. Beside him, Sienna's hand, which had been resting on his arm with a fragile, trembling weight, slowly went limp. The dark red hickey on her shoulder, the one she had so carefully displayed under her slipped strap, seemed to turn a sickly, sallow gray under the harsh fluorescent lights of the corridor. A miscarriage? Garrett's voice was a low, dry rattle. He didn't look at the doctor. His eyes stayed locked on my face, his brows knitting together in a pattern of pure, unadulterated confusion. What do you mean, miscarriage? Kira, you said you had a fever. You said the hospital visit was just a routine check. She didn't tell you, Mr. Holloway? The doctor asked, her tone shifting from clinical professional to a cold, sharp disdain as she looked at his tailored suit and then at the bloody stains on my hospital gown. The patient was admitted 5 days ago with severe lower abdominal trauma and active hemorrhage. The ultrasound showed a massive subchorionic hematoma. We performed a manual vacuum aspiration to clear the remaining tissue. The patient's signature was on the consent form because there was no family member present to sign. Garrett took a step back, his foot coming down onto the torn pieces of our launch photograph on the floor. 5 days ago, he whispered, his knuckles turning a dry, papery yellow under the skin. The day of the mall. I thought you were just playing the victim because I took Sienna to her checkup. I was at the mall, Garrett, I said, my voice carrying the flat, level rhythm of a dry logistics report. A child slammed into my stomach. I called you 20 times in 10 minutes. The call was declined twice, and on the third attempt you told me to stop being so dramatic because Sienna was having a morning sickness emergency. I stood up slowly from the wooden bench, my fingers reaching out to grip the cold iron railing of the corridor to support my weight. My body still felt light, empty, and hollowed out, but the sharp stabbing pain in my stomach had gone, replaced by an absolute, beautiful silence. You lost the baby, Garrett whispered, his hands trembling as he reached out toward me, his voice cracking with a raw, desperate panic. Our baby. Kira, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say it was that bad? Because, I said, looking him dead in the eye, it wouldn't have made any difference to you. If I were strong, you'd say I didn't need you. If I were weak, you'd say I was throwing a tantrum. In your eyes, Garrett, my existence was always just a chore. I turned my back to him, my heels clicking a slow, steady cadence against the linoleum as I walked toward the exit. Kira, wait, Garrett screamed, trying to step around the doctor, but the two hospital security guards standing near the doors immediately stepped forward, their hands resting on their utility belts, blocking his path. Mr. Holloway, the lead guard said, his voice flat as cement. The patient has requested a private discharge. Please do not disturb her. The house on the hill was quiet when I returned on Friday morning. The central heater was humming softly, but the air inside still smelled faintly of Sienna's cheap peach perfume and the greasy bacon she had cooked in my kitchen. I stood in the entryway, wearing my gray coat, my hands tucked into my pockets. Beside me stood my mother, Mrs. Prescott, dressed in a sharp, tailored wool suit, her face carrying that dry, unyielding authority that had made her a legend in the city's business sector. Behind her stood our family's lead, corporate attorney Marcus and 2 municipal court bailiffs. The living room was a mess. Sienna's designer shopping bags were scattered across the sofa, and her pregnancy manuals were piled on the ivory wool rug. In the kitchen, the washing machine was running, its rhythmic shuck-shuck sound echoing through the quiet house. Kira. Sienna walked out of the master bedroom, wearing my favorite silk bathrobe, the one my mother had given me before she passed away. She was holding a cup of tea, her hair loose, a smug, sleepy grin on her lips. But when she saw the 2 court bailiffs and the folder in Marcus's hand, her smile froze, her fingers tightening around the ceramic mug until her knuckles went white. What is the meaning of this? Sienna hissed, her voice losing all its fragile, sweet polish. Garrett. Garrett, get out here. Your wife brought people into our house. It's not his house, Miss Cole, Marcus said, stepping forward and opening his briefcase. He pulled out a laminated document with a red court seal at the top. This is a formal writ of ejectment and an active domestic protection order, issued by the state Supreme Court yesterday afternoon. He handed the paper to her. Under the terms of the premarital purchase agreement, this property is the sole non-marital asset of Kira Prescott. The defendant, Garrett Holloway, and any third-party occupants associated with him have 60 minutes to pack their personal belongings and vacate the premises. 60 minutes? Sienna shrieked, her voice pitching high and frantic. That's impossible. My doctor's notes are in the wardrobe. Where am I supposed to take them? Garrett. Garrett, tell them they can't do this. Garrett walked out of the study. He was wearing his suit, but his tie was gone, his face gray and hollowed out by a week of sleeplessness. He didn't look at Sienna. He looked at me, his eyes wide, wild with a quiet, desperate pleading. Kira, he whispered. The movers are downstairs, Garrett, I said, my voice carrying the flat level rhythm of a logistics report. They only have orders to carry the wooden box in the basement storage closet, the one with your father's old tools. Everything else stays here. Kira, you can't be this cruel. Sienna screamed, lunging toward me, her fingernails clawing at the air. I'm pregnant. The doctors said I can't be stressed. If you throw us onto the street, I'll make sure the whole company knows what a heartless monster you are. But before her hand could reach my collar, the 2 bailiffs stepped between us, their heavy leather duty belts creaking as their hands rested on their taser holsters. Ma'am, please step back, the lead bailiff said, his voice flat as cement. If you lay a finger on the plaintiff, you will be arrested on site for domestic battery. Sienna froze. Her hand slowly dropped to her side, her face turning an angry, splotchy sallow beneath her foundation. She looked at Garrett, but Garrett had already sat down on the stool near the counter, his head buried in his hands, his body shaking with a silent, pathetic sobbing. You weak, spineless idiot, Sienna spat, turning her venomous glare onto him. I told you to make her sign the joint account deed. I told you she was planning to ruin us. Now look at you. You lost the apartment, you lost your job, and your mother won't even answer my texts. Shut up, Sienna, Garrett muttered, his voice hoarse and broken. Just shut up. I didn't stay to watch them pack. I turned on my heel, walked out of the apartment, and let the heavy door slam shut behind me, leaving the parasites to devour each other in the cold. Without the Prescott Group's support, the Holloway Group fell into a state of rapid, high-intensity collapse. The news of the arson and fraud audit had gone viral, turning the Holloway family's high society reputation into a public joke. The local newspapers played the story of the silent savior on every page, with dozens of former partners coming forward to describe the years of systematic abuse and neglect I had endured while building my fiancé's company. I sat in my cozy, sunlit study in my new downtown apartment, a cup of hot chamomile tea in my hand, reviewing the final draft of my civil suit. My phone, sitting on the wood beside my tea, vibrated once. It was a news notification from the city. Former billionaire Garrett Holloway's bankruptcy case concluded. Court orders liquidation of remaining personal assets to fund the Prescott Memorial Trust. Beneath the headline was a small photo of Garrett standing outside the municipal courthouse. He was wearing a cheap, off-the-rack gray coat, his hair completely white, his eyes hollow, entirely free of the billions that had once made him untouchable. And as for Sienna, she was currently serving her second year of a 15-year sentence in a state penitentiary, her name permanently removed from the company registry, her family's empire dismantled by the creditors and the prosecutors. I looked at the screen for a long, quiet moment. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the sharp, twisting pain of the trauma that had kept me awake during those cold winter nights in the apartment. The boy who had pulled me out of the river, and the girl who had faked her pregnancy were gone, reduced to simple, dry statistics in a folder I would never open again. I closed the laptop, put my phone on silent, and picked up my tea. A gust of wind off the ocean caught my hair, blowing a few dry leaves across the wooden deck. I looked out at the endless horizon of the sea, where the sun was beginning to break through the fog, casting a wide, golden path across the dark blue water. I smiled, my heart completely light, my mind completely quiet, and my path finally beautifully my own.